All right, students, parents, everyone, welcome back to another Star Tutors live stream. If you guys haven't been with us before, we hope that you're doing well. Hope that you're hanging in there through all this school stuff. And if you guys are watching the live stream, if you're watching it live, obviously, can you guys just give us a thumbs up? For those that haven't done this before, I am Chase. I will be your host and your confidant today. We will also have a very, very special guest on today. Jodi Gershoni is here. For those that have seen our some of our previous videos, we are going to be looking. Let's see. Can you guys see the full screen here? Make sure that everybody's seen everything okay. Should be on in just a second, guiding us through some of the college application decisions. So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. If you are here with us live, can everybody just give me a thumbs up in the chat? Let me know that you're here, or a thumbs up as we move through this. Jodi, if you can just hang on for 1 second, we'll lead everybody through and make sure that you guys have an opportunity. If you don't get a chance to watch this with us live today, you will see this as a recorded video. So please stay tuned for that, and we will get started in just a second. And again, guys, as you log in today, just please make sure that you have your that you are able to follow along. One final thing here, I did post the presentation that Jodi and I are going to take a look at today. I did post that in the chat below the video. So if you guys are interested in following along with the presentation, what we guide you through, all you have to do is click that link. It should take you to the Google Drive folder. So hopefully everybody has access to that. Jodi and I spent some time putting this together. Again, if you want to access the presentation that you're going to see today that Jodi and I are going to run you through, you can do that by clicking the Google Drive link below. Okay, so without further ado, Jodi, if you want to, let's see, guys, are we still having some streaming issues here? Give me 1 sec. Jodi, if you want to unmute here, we'll bring you in.
Okay, unmuted.
Can you hear everything, guys? If you can hear Jodi, can you give me a thumbs up or a hello in the chat?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, this is Jodi. She's been with us before. This is our 10th grade high school presentation. Jodi, when was it, last year where we did the COVID? We did post-COVID college applications. So this is not the first time that Jodi has made a guest appearance here on the Star Tutors YouTube channel. She runs a company called College Unlimited. She has a lot of knowledge about the college admissions process, what that all looks like. So please make sure that if you have any questions, we're going to go through maybe a 30-minute discussion or so tonight just to give you guys an opportunity to see some of the ins and outs of what it's like to be a 10th grader or a 9th grader going through this process now. And we'll start in just a second here. Jodi, give me 1 sec. Jodi, you can see the presentation. Everybody online, can you guys give me a thumbs up? If thumbs up in the chat. Can everybody see the live chat that you guys can ask questions there, and hopefully can follow along with some certainty there. And let's just make sure everything's running. Okay, Jodi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let's get started. If Jodi, just let me know when Jodi's going to start off the presentation tonight, leading you through some of the thoughts and where we have discussed and talked about leading where 10th graders should be what they should be thinking about right now, where the college admissions process has gone for 10th graders. Should you be thinking about testing? Should you be doing number of these different things that I'm sure many of you are familiar with at this point? So Jodi, you want to take us away with your first couple slides here?
Okay, thank you, Chase, for having me. I'm excited to bring you guys some information regarding what 9th and 10th graders can be thinking about or should be thinking about during this phase of your high school career. I'm actually also a mom of 2 current high schoolers, so I'm very privy to lots of questions coming out of each grade, 9th, 10th, 11th, and even 12th grade. So we thought that kind of hitting the younger years to be able to clear up some of the confusion, kind of focus on what you should be doing now, just like the 3 or 4 things that might help you prepare for the future. Is kind of why we put this together. So we go back to the cartoon.
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to show you guys this because I wanted you to kind of demystify the whole process of college admissions, and instead of thinking of it as a scary, daunting, endeavor that you guys are about to, go towards, I wanted you to know that it is way more in your control than you think. And what I mean by that isn't exactly, that school X or school Y will be in your control, but what really is in your control is how to build self so that you are ready to create a good fit list of schools and then successfully apply to those. And I'll explain what that means throughout this presentation, but this slide kind of honed in on the fact that, like it says here, some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, and others make it happen.
All right, Jodi. I think that's better. Guys, can you hear us? Just
Good.
Yes.
Okay. So,
sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on there with some of the streaming quality, but yeah, Jodi, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so the whole idea of this is that I'm going to teach you guys how to actually make it happen. It's way more in your control than you think. Okay, will you go to the next slide?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jodi, can you just talk a little bit more in relation to that? A lot of our students ask. There's so many questions that I think it feels to the control idea. I think it feels a little bit overwhelming in terms of what. Where do you start? I think our students, if they're 10th graders, 9th graders, they say like, well, I understand this and whatnot, and I understand that I have to do that eventually, but I'm just not really sure where I need to start this whole process. As a 10th or 9th or 10th grader, can you just give us an idea as to where?
Yes. Actually, that's a great question. Can you move forward to the slide that I did with just the columns of 9th and 10th grade? Because I think we're just going to dive right into that.
Okay.
It's like 3 slides forward, I think. Keep going. I'll go back to this stuff.
Okay,
Keep going. This one.
Yep.
Okay. So to answer your question, there are some tangible things that 9th and 10th graders can do to help start the process, to start building self, so that once you are creating your applications, you will have strong stuff to put out there to present to the college admissions offices. Okay, so what can you do? First of all, and I'm going to focus on 10th grade here because I think most of our audience are in 10th graders, but when you start high school, you're exposed to all sorts of new stuff. You're exposed to new academics, a little bit harder classes. There's usually activities, fairs, and the administration is constantly talking to you about things that are in front of you, but it becomes a little bit overwhelming. So one tangible thing that I recommend is to, at the early year, it's either 9th or 10th grade, schedule a meeting with your counselor for no other. Go ahead.
No, and your high school counselor?
Yes, your high school counselor. So even if you're in a public school where that counselor has hundreds of students, or a private school that is a much smaller caseload, I recommend scheduling a meeting with that counselor for no other reason but to introduce yourself, because that person's going to be super important to you during the admissions process, but also for them to lay out what's available within your high school, so that when you're choosing classes and you're choosing next steps, you actually have a picture in front of you, so that you're not choosing blindly. Some schools have on-level academic paths. Some schools have honors paths. Some schools have AP paths or IB paths. But when you're 9th and 10th grade, it seems a lot more overwhelming. But if you have a one-on-one meeting with your counselor just to say, hey, my name's Jodi, I'm in 9th or 10th grade, and I just want to make sure I'm doing everything okay. That counselor will, number one, be super excited because here they have a driven student that is, proactively come to them. But also, they will lay out what's available. And then as you're doing your course selection for the next semester or the next year, you'll actually make an educated decision. So that's one piece of advice. Number two, I say this to my own kids and I say to all my students, try things. So essentially, when you have those activities, fairs, or you hear about clubs or sports or different things that are offered at school, even if it's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, pick one or two things that look interesting to you and just try it, because it's just as important to know what you like as to know what you don't like. And then as you get older, and go through your years, the goal is to hopefully have one or two of those things stick so that you build on, the depth or the continuity or the, interest level that you have in one or two activities. So that's the second piece of advice.
And on that one, yes? Too, yeah. So Jodi, on that one too, when you say one thing students ask us all the time, same kind of idea is building upon this. How can I do more, right? How can I make myself stand out? It's true, right, that it's better to have 2 or 3 activities, like you said, as a 9th grader, right? And this really does start in 9th grade, maybe 10th, but for the 9th graders out there that are watching this, it's true that it starts in 9th grade, where you can choose 10 activities as a 9th grader, and they realize that those 10 activities aren't going to last you probably all the way through high school. But it's better to find the 2 or 3 activities within those 10 that you really like, rather than being focused on the all 10 of them in some minor capacity.
Right, and that's why I say pick 2 activities as a 9th grader and see if you like them, because the goal is, let's say you like one of them and not the other, then you continue that one in 10th grade and 11th grade, and as you continue, you build depth. So I always say, when I was younger, which was many decades ago, we were always told to be well-rounded. You need to be a well-rounded student to get into the colleges that you want. In today's world, they don't want well-rounded students. They want a well-rounded freshman class, which means they want to know who they're admitting. And the only way for them to know who they're admitting is to see depth of interest. So if I, take a journalism class my freshman year in high school, and I kind of like writing, maybe my sophomore year in high school, I will maybe volunteer to be in a special beat or special section. And then I start becoming, more focused on a specific part of journalism. And then my junior year, maybe I get an editor position, and then it keeps growing into depth. Even if you're an athlete and you're looking for ways for depth, there's always ways to do that. As you grow within your sport, you could become a captain. You could do a fundraiser for team equipment or uniforms. You could just raise your hand and get involved versus, just participating at a light level in 10 different activities, like you say, Chase.
Yeah, and I think, and guys, I think that Jodi made a perfect point. I hadn't heard it this way before, but I think it's something that all of us should take into account when choosing a college, or when colleges make their selections. It's no longer about everybody being a well-rounded student. I think it was very, very well said that it's about having a well-rounded freshman class for the school, and they want to look good. And so if they have one student that is accepted, especially at the top schools, right? I mean, like we've had students over the course of the last 4 or 5 years go to different Ivy League schools, right, and have some capacity there. But it's so much more about them being very narrowly focused. Like if you're in the robotics club, right, or if you're in whatever. That's kind of what the school is going to expect from you. And for anybody that's watching and following up on this, it does make sense that an Ivy League school, there is so much competition there now that they want to know that you're going to go out in the world and do extremely well in whatever avenue that you choose to pursue. And the only reason they feel that way is because there's 20 million other students that also want to get in there, and they're selecting. Ultimately, these colleges want you to represent the college well. Is that fair to say, Jodi, that's half the battle?
Yeah, they want to know what you're going to be doing on their campus. So if they have a student come into their campus and on the application, most of their essay questions were about the experiences they learned, in mock trial, they know that that student's going to gravitate towards something, that kind of mirrors that interest that they had in high school. So that's what's super important to them. And the other thing, just to build on what you're saying, is if you are thinking, even at a 9th and 10th grader, if you are thinking that you want to go towards, the highest level of selective college admissions, it is important to start early.
Yeah.
So this is the time, like I said, take my advice here, pick 1 or 2 activities in 9th grade, and if you don't like them, then quickly go to 2 other activities in 10th grade and start diving in deeper. And it doesn't have to be in the school. It can be outside of the school. So sometimes students don't have anything that they want to participate within the school walls. That's okay. There's plenty of stuff to do. And in today's world, so many kids are applying to college and they look the same on paper. There's grade inflation, so grades are starting to look the same. Testing's a differentiator, but that's also changing, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So how do they differentiate students? They do it by where these kids are gravitating towards outside the classroom, outside their academics. And 9th and 10th grade is the building blocks of when this all begins.
And what happens if you didn't? We have a follow-up question to that is, right, we have a lot of students that then say, like, well, I'm ending my 10th grade year. I'm coming to the end of my 10th grade year, and I really don't feel like I've differentiated myself enough to get into these top colleges. Is there anything that can be done that effectively makes you stand out, or is there anything that you can do that maybe is not as much of a time requirement, maybe beyond testing even? That's not as much of a time sensitive issue. Like, oh, I've already I'm already done with 2 years of high school. Is there anything that students can do that would warrant that?
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's so the short answer is it's never too late. So you have summer coming up. Summer's a great time to try new things and to dive in deep. So if you have a student that's finishing their 10th grade year, is starting to kind of gravitate towards a certain subject of interest, whether it be an academic subject or some kind of activity, summer, look for opportunities to do research or shadow some professional or just volunteer your time. That's when you're starting to build the skills that they want. And when you're writing your applications and throughout the entire application, but mostly your essays, all of those real life skills are going to come out within each different part of the application. So yeah, I mean, it's not too late. The only reason I said 9th and 10th grade is because we were focused
No.
on.
I agree. No, I think that's no. The reason that I just asked that because I think there is a spectrum that we see with students and a lot of times these videos are so focused, not only with us, but students hear so much about well, what happens if I want to go to an Ivy League? But that's not going to apply to every student, and that's really why I asked the question, was that obviously it is going to apply to 9th and 10th grade. Even 9th graders, sometimes they feel like they didn't get the grades they wanted, right? And they feel like, well, I might as well not try anymore. And that's really what I think that Jodi just communicated to everybody that's watching on the channel, that the communication there is that it's never too late. And there are things that you can keep doing. And at that point, right, it's just about giving up. Like, if you're going to give up, then you're just at that point. If you do continue on, you still open up the more opportunities you have. It might no longer be Harvard as an option, but it's still going to open up more opportunities than if you just decided to give up as a 9th grader.
Well, and don't discount the options at this point. But go back to the slide with the 5 pillars. I'll clear this. I'll clear this up. I've kind of created a way to pare down college admissions in 5 tangible pillars here, which are all listed right here. And this is going to kind of cover what you just said. So the first and always most important pillar is going to be your high school rigor and grades. So under the umbrella of the high school that you go to, whatever's offered to you, how did you achieve your GPA, and did you have an upward trajectory each year? So if you're in 9th grade and you tried, you didn't do so well, as long as you add a little bit of rigor and try a little bit harder in 10th grade, 11th grade, and so on, and you have that upward trajectory, you're going to be positioned very well for all levels of college. You know, no one is expected to have perfect everything since day one. So I just want to kind of hone that in. So rule one, upward trajectory in both rigor and, you know, obviously doing well within that rigor. Number two are test scores, which we will talk about in a little bit, so I'll leave that for Chase. Number three is the student resume. This is what we were talking about before. You know, your activities, and like I said here, depth versus breadth. Pick one or two activities that that you like and look for ways to dive deeper. How do you do that? If you're interested in nutrition and you like to cook, maybe you can read a few books on nutritional science. Maybe you can volunteer to help out a local nutritionist. Maybe you can, you know, do a project in your school biology class that is focused on food science. I mean, there's so many creative ways to dive deep that aren't necessarily formal, that are, you know, that gives you a president or a captain. You know, colleges know that life is kind of messy, so they just want people that can go out and look for ways to build self. So that's where pillar 3 is, student resume. And then 4 and 5 are your essays and recommendations. And that's when these building blocks in 9th and 10th grade help put meat into those essays and recommendations. That's college admissions in a nutshell.
College admissions in a nutshell, guys. Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think that if you continue to follow that plan wherever you are, right, wherever you are in the process of all of this, I think if you've been 9th and 10th grade is obviously very, very different times, but wherever you are in the process, don't lose sight of those things that are mentioned in that, you know, in those 5, right, in those 5 pillars. I think that's going to be absolutely crucial as you keep moving forward, that you don't lose sight of things that are, you know, relatively outside of your control, like not getting off to a great start. As Jodi mentioned, make sure that you might not have got off to a great start, but if you're continuing to improve, people are going to take that into consideration. And in a lot of ways, that can be even, you know, a bigger plus, as Jodi mentioned, that can be even a bigger plus than certainly than if you just decided to give up at that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, that's perfect. Anything else, Jodi, that you want to include on that part of the slide?
The only thing I was going to say is I have a slide on this too about kind of interesting things that happen in 9th and 10th grade. Can you go to that last one before the testing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
No.
Not very organized here. So I actually learned this when my own kids were going through high school, but
right.
The one
before, yep.
Yeah. Your first 2 years of high school will influence the quality of your college application. So I can't stress enough that think of your first 2 years as the trial years and your second 2 years as the depth years. Okay, so it's not too late. If you're at the end of 10th grade, just speed it up a little bit, but you'll get there. And then this middle one is an actual truth, but hopefully you guys are working hard because statistically students don't deviate too much from their GPA from their freshman year. There are situations that if you don't do well your freshman year, you can really, really work hard and get a big bump. But for the most part, people don't change more than 0.5 from freshman year on their GPA. And then lastly here, 9th and 10th grades, best time to start the foundation of your student resume. I know I keep honing this in, but it's your time for exploration. And I truly, truly believe that, because that is what will ultimately help you differentiate yourself within your application. And then I'll let Chase talk some more about the testing situation.
Yeah, guys. So, you guys can all follow along with the presentation. I apologize for the technical difficulties we're having, and I think it's just a streaming quality issue, which hasn't happened on any recent live streams. But in any case, I think that what Jodi mentioned, and you guys can follow along with the presentation. Like I said, it's posted in the live chat. It's also posted below the video if you guys want access to this entire presentation. But from a testing standpoint, there's some reasonable qualifications, I think, that you want to have before you start to overthink this, right? To like, oh, I should start getting started with this too early. I think if you find yourself doing that, Jody and I talk about it a lot, but you're going to get burnt out pretty easily, right? Especially if it's stuff that you don't. This is never going to be the first thing that you wake up thinking about, right? This is never going to be the thing that you sit there and you're like, I can't wait to get to talk about SAT stuff more today. And if you do that too often, it just becomes, you just go kind of over and over and over, and you start to hit a plateau, and it just becomes too much. So one of the first things that I would say is that from a testing standpoint, if you're in the 10th grade, ninth grade, you can ninth grade, the best advice I can give is that if you're taking the PSAT in the spring here coming up, probably in the next 10 to 15 days, it is a very, very important for your testing in general that you take that very seriously. That doesn't mean that you have to prepare for it. That doesn't mean that you have to do a bunch of outside stuff. It simply means that you got to do a lot of you on the test day itself. You want to take that seriously, right? On the test day itself, right, Jody? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely take opportunities to practice those exams. 9th and 10th grade, they give you those PSATs. It's purely practice.
Yeah, and most of us don't want to do, right? Most of us don't want to do as much as we probably should to get on those test days. It's just kind of a throwaway day. I remember those days when I was in high school. Standardized testing isn't the first thing that we think about, but take advantage of those, right? If we're telling you that you don't need to do much else, like that's really where you can be pretty focused, right? That's where you can be pretty focused. Then I think that's kind of what we want to be, aware of. Jody, can you still see the presentation?
Black screen.
What's going on there? Sorry, guys. See it now?
Yep.
Sorry, guys. But again, right, as we go through this, the thing that you want to be most considerate of, the thing you want to find the most important is that this is a process. This is all process oriented. So let's make sure that we go through this in that way.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to add that the key from a testing standpoint, if you're finished with 10th grade, is to have your game plan before you start your junior year. Meaning, take presentations off.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna.
So essentially, if you have a game plan before junior year begins, meaning your timeline is set. So let's say you have a busy fall because you're a fall athlete or you have the fall play, then potentially wait until that activity is over to start heavy duty test prep, because there's plenty of times throughout your junior year that you can take these exams. So you don't need to feel anxious about timing. It's more about what's best for you. Agreed?
Yeah,
Chase?
100%. Yeah, I think that this is already adding another component to your life, to your thoughts, right, to all of that. We don't want to be doing too much to add on to that stress, right? If this is right in the middle of your sports season, right, in the middle of a musical, whatever it might be, it's not a good idea to add on to that stress level. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I mean, I think that the follow-up to that, guys, is that if you're in 9th or 10th grade, you want to take those things seriously. If you're in 10th grade, if you've finished Algebra 2 is kind of the baseline for Algebra 2 Trig. Some schools have Trig incorporated with their Algebra 2 plans, some don't. But if you have Algebra 2 Trig and you've completed that course, then I think it's reasonable to expect that you can start preparing for these exams. If not, one of the things that gets frustrating, especially for a student that doesn't love math, is that we just feel overwhelmed when we don't know the material to begin with, and now we not only have to review it, we really have to learn it. That's too much. We're already saying that this is a lot, this is a big process to begin with, and I think that just becomes too much. And we really want to be focused more on the idea that in the moments that we do take it seriously, like when there's a PSAT exam, right, when we're going to take our first practice exam, all those things become learning opportunities. And the less we think about the test score and how this is going to apply to college, the better we're going to do in the long run. Is that all fair, Jody?
Yes. Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Okay. So again, there's plenty of times to take this exam, so there's absolutely no reason to feel rushed. And remember, the other stuff, your grades, your student resume, are hugely important. So if the test prep is taking away from any of that, you kind of have to reevaluate how you're going about, your process. And Chase, are you going to talk about the test optional world, or do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, I think from a test optional standpoint, I think more than anything, test optional, guys, for the record, is an opportunity an opportunity that colleges have taken to change the requirements that they direct towards testing, the SAT and ACT testing. Basically, what test optional means is that you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT, but it can still be a good idea to do that. Jodi, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I think we're frozen here. Sorry, guys, this is becoming kind of a mess here from a technological standpoint. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully everybody can still hear us. Again, I think that as you make the next steps and take the next steps in terms of getting yourselves ready to go for these different exams, remember that ultimately test optional is becoming adopted or is being adopted by a number of different colleges across the country. So ultimately, you don't have to submit these test scores. That's what test optional means. You don't have to submit the test scores, but they can be looked upon. They can be looked at as a plus in your category. Very similar to like what it would be like if you were the captain of your high school sports team, or you were the lead in the musical. That's kind of how these tests have been taken more recently, and that's kind of how we want to approach them. Is that fair to say, Jodi? Instead of thinking about this as like the end all be all.
It's true. It's not. In 5 years ago, it was the end all be all. This currently and in the future, we don't know which schools will be test optional and which schools won't. But I would say it's fair to say at least 50% of the schools in this country aren't going to go back to required testing. What I would say is that, and what that really means is that if you truly don't feel your test score accurately represents your ability as a student, and the school is test optional, then you don't need to submit. And people ask me this all the time, like, if I don't submit my test scores, aren't they going to think that I have terrible test scores, so I'm not a good candidate?
Yeah,
that's not the case at all, because the schools want to accept you, and they want to evaluate you based on what they have. If your test scores aren't that high, they don't want you to submit them because they have to report those test scores, which would kind of be a factor in how the information they report for rankings, for statistics, for things that are important to a college from an institutional standpoint. So they're only looking for the high test score. So if your score is a little bit lower or kind of medium within the 50% range, but your grades are better, then by all means, you don't need to submit them. But I will vouch for what Chase is saying. If you can get a high test score or a higher test score, it is extremely helpful, way more helpful today than it was 5 years ago, because so many kids aren't submitting scores, which means I tell all my students, even the ones that say I'm a terrible test taker, it's not going to be great, blah, 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 it's still worth trying.
Yeah, so we're trying, and again, I think that's right. I think that you can always put your best foot forward. I don't think that means that you have to be overwhelmed by this stuff. I will say this as a mention to everybody, that international students still do need to submit test scores. We have a lot of international students that watch the channel, they're on the channel. You still do need to submit test scores, so just be aware of that, because that does change. Or it's not always the SAT and the ACT that's the requirement, but it is always some form of an English language test, so that, and again, that's for the benefit of you guys, to be honest, that they just don't want you to be in a situation where you are, struggling when every class is in English and it's hard to stay focused. So just know that that's for the benefit, but it is something to be considerate of.
Yeah, so back to the focus on the 9th and 10th graders.
Yeah.
Just know that it's going to be as part of your life junior year. So if you can practice during the PSAT time that the schools give for free, typically, in 9th and 10th grade, then it will better prepare you for the real year of junior year, for the actual exams. So just know it should be in your future.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So yeah, Jodi, let's kind of wrap it up there, just because we're having these technical things. That's on me, guys. Again, we had no streaming issues on this last call. I don't know if there's a ton we can do about it right now, but let's wrap it up there, Jodi. Guys, hopefully, if you have any questions, if the video was an issue at all, just make sure that you. But I know the audio was working all the way through. So if you had any questions with the video and you just didn't get a chance to ask them in the chat while you watched us, just make sure that you ask those in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And we'll obviously follow up with any of our teachers or tutors. Jodi will be in the comment section of our channel, just making sure that she's able to answer any questions. But yeah, hopefully you guys are able to work through all of this. You guys can continue to be thinking about this college application process, and ultimately we'll take those steps forward together and can answer those questions for you. So. I hope you guys still found this to be. Again, the audio is working, so hopefully everybody found this to be at least somewhat informative. But if not, just keep us posted. We're going to be coming out